welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be filming a review on the new Kat Von D Shade and Light Contour Palette. I'm super excited because this video was actually requested to me from one of my subscribers, so I want to say thank you for the request. And if you guys have any other videos that you guys would like to see in the future, leave them in the comments below. So without further ado, if you want to see how I use this gorgeous highlight and contour palette, go ahead and keep watching. Before we get started, I want to remind you guys that I've already prepped my skin with a moisturizer, primer, as well as foundation and concealer. Now, I would really recommend putting on all of your liquids and creams first before using any powder products. So since I'm pretty pale, I'm going to be using her shade Sombre today for my contour. I love this shade for contouring because it has a really good true cool undertone. So it won't look like you have bronzer on your face, it'll look like you just have a natural shadow in that back corner right here. And then to apply that, I'm going to be using my Sephora Collection angled contour brush number 75. I love this brush because it has a really good angle to hug that cheekbone. You can kind of draw the line and then flip it and then blend it up and back. One of the easiest ways to find out where to place your contour is using your ear in the corner of your mouth as a reference point. So think about if there was an imaginary straight line from the top of your ear to the corner of your mouth. With the contour color, you're going to almost want to start to kind of sculpt out that line, but you obviously don't want to draw a straight line. What you want to do is start to kind of place that on the top where your ear is right here and lightly drag it down into a straight of a line. And then once you get to the point where it gets to be where your eye is about right here, you want to lightly kind of start to curve it in this way as opposed to going all the way straight down. Because if you were to go all the way straight down, it would make people look at your cheeks, and then next they would look at your jaw, and it's going to make the face appear more masculine. What you want to do is lightly curve it this way so that it makes people look at your cheeks and then next your eyes. So then what I'm going to do now is just lightly kind of buff that color out into the apple of my cheek like this. I always like to kind of curve it like this and draw the line and then flip it and then buff it up and back using a little bit more of like baby circular motion just to make sure it all gets blended in. Now you can always customize it to being as dark as you want or as light as you want. I personally like a dark contour, so I'm going to apply a little bit more with that same brush and just kind of buff it out into the cheeks. And the biggest key to making it look semi-natural is blending it all the way up back into the hairline, because if you don't, there'll be a little bit of a line of demarcation from the bronzer or contour color and then where your hair and your skin is all back here where people usually have a little bit of a lighter skin color. So I'm just going to buff that in. Don't be afraid to get your brush in your hair, get your hair dirty, because you really want to make that blend and look natural. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing to this side. So kind of using that reference point A and B, I'm going to start to kind of sculpt out that line. And then now that I'm back where my eye is, I'm going to curve it into the apple of my cheek. And then kind of just lightly buff it out. I'm going to apply a little bit more on this side to make it intense like the other side. Contouring is definitely a preference thing, so you can do it as dark or as light as you would like. I always recommend practicing at night when you're not going anywhere, so if you mess it up you can just wash it all off, so you don't have to worry about being late to work or school. But definitely keep practicing and you'll become a pro. You can make it dark and dramatic like I have it, where it's kind of like that cut cheekbone look, or you can definitely use like a bigger brush like this if you want it to be way more softer and way more diffused. Now that I have my contour placed on my cheeks, I'm going to lightly start to kind of sculpt out my forehead. You don't always have to sculpt your forehead, especially if you have more of like a narrow forehead. But if you guys can notice how I have a little bit more of like a widow's peak right here, that means I have more of a heart-shaped face, which means I'm pretty much going to want to sculpt out this harsh edge and make my face appear more kind of oval and round. So for the forehead area, I don't like to use very precise brushes like this. I like to use more kind of big fluffy ones so that it looks way more diffused into your hair, as opposed to it being very blunt and kind of harsh right here. So I'm going to take that same kind of like cool tone shade with my brush, and I'm just going to lightly kind of shave off the 90-degree angles on my forehead, just to make it look a little bit more rounded out. One thing about forehead contouring too is you can use your eyebrows as a reference point as well. Because if you were to kind of think about a line right here from the end of your eyebrow, you would want all your bronzer to be here, and then once the eyebrow tail ends, everything below the eyebrow tail should be highlight right here. So you can make it very, very precise of like a blunt line here if you want it to be very dramatic, kind of like this, but then that kind of starts to make it look a little bit more kind of draggy and very exaggerated. So I kind of will lightly place that there where my eyebrow ends, but I try to blend it as opposed to it being very, very blunt. So for nose and jaw contour, I don't necessarily need to do that because I have more of a heart-shaped face, which means that my face kind of goes out and then kind of goes round to more of a narrow jawline. So if you have more of an oval or kind of square face, you can kind of shave off the edges right here of the jaw if you want to contour it, but I necessarily don't because I don't need my jaw to look any more narrow than it already is. Same with nose. I already have a pretty elongated nose bridge, so I don't need to thin my nose out. Only thing that I would necessarily do sometimes is make my nose right here look a little bit thinner by kind of rounding it and kind of boxing in this color, but I don't necessarily like to contour my nose every day because it looks a little bit too much, and the average person doesn't need to do that on the daily. That's way more stage makeup or like exaggerated for videos or photography. Now that I have all of my contour placed, I'm going to lightly kind of place a little bit of a highlight under my eyes as well as my T-zone just to make sure that it has that dimension that lift it forward. So for my under eye highlight, I'm going to be using her shade Lyric right here. I love how yellow this is because if you have any purple or blue tones under your eyes from lack of sleep or dehydration, the yellow in that will kind of counteract the purple and blue so that it looks a little bit more neutral and concealed. So I'm going to be using this e.l.f. concealer brush, but the reason why I love this for highlighting is because it has a really good domed curvature to it, so it just places the pigment directly under my eye as opposed to it like all falling out on my contour. So I'm going to lightly dip my brush in the shade Lyric, and I'm just going to focus on kind of pressing that all in this under eye area right here. Now if this gets a little bit too yellow for you, you can place it down first and neutralize the blue and purple tones, and then you can use any of her other shades like this or this to put on top of it if you don't want it to be as yellow. But for me, I kind of like how it looks. So just like I said earlier, you just keep the highlight under your eyebrow tail, because if you go higher than your eyebrow, it's going to look really weird. So when I do that, I kind of just buff it down so that it lightly blends into my contour. And I'm just kind of placing that in a triangle of light motion. And then I'm going to take that same banana shade and just kind of lightly highlight my T-zone area. I don't even know if you guys can pick this up on camera because I'm so pale that this highlight just looks like my skin color. And then to finish off my cheeks, I'm going to apply a little bit of blush just to make sure everything's blended together and looks very seamless and diffused. For my blush today, I'm going to be using the Sephora Collection Angled Blush Brush 49, and I'm going to be taking some of my favorite blush in the world in the Hourglass Ambient Lighting Blush Palette. I'm going to use the middle one today because I like that kind of coral look, and I'm going to apply that just on the apples of my cheeks and blend it all the way back into my hairline. So I've lightly dipped my brush into the pigment and I've tapped off the excess, and I'm going to start by kind of pushing that blush pigment into the apple of my cheek like that. And then I'm going to lightly dip my brush again and do the same exact thing on this side. As you can see, I'm not blending any of it yet. All I'm doing is I'm placing the blush pigment down, and then once I feel like I've placed it, I'm going to wipe off my brush and then I'm going to buff it out. So to buff out my blush, I'm just going to lightly kind of pull it back into that contour and highlight color, and what that's going to do is it's going to help it look way more diffused and seamless and natural. Now that I'm satisfied with my cheeks, I'm going to show you guys how you can use this palette on your eyes as well. Because there's nothing more annoying in my personal opinion than when people say like, oh, I'm never going to use that color because I'm not that dark. It's like, all this is powdered pigment. You can use it on your eyes. You can put it anywhere on your body. It doesn't have to go on your cheeks. So I really want to show you guys how you can do eye makeup with this as well. So the look that I'm going to do with my eyes is going to be very, very soft and neutral like my cheeks, but I just want to show you guys how, if you are in a rush, you can just use one kind of contour and highlight palette for your full face pretty much. So to start my eyes, I'm going to take that same highlight shade Lyric with a little bit more of like a flat eyeshadow brush, and I'm just going to pretty much push that pigment from my eyebrow all the way down to my lash line. Now this is going to be a really good way to kind of create a base for all of your eyeshadow pigments, just so that everything can have something to hold onto and blend onto. You can get kind of sloppy with this if you're lighter skin like me, because all it does is make it look like it's just my normal body color. Now that I have the highlight on my eye, I'm going to take a little bit more of a big size crease brush like this, and I'm going to diffuse that out all into my crease. I'm not using a very precise brush because I want this to be all the way diffused out, since this is the cool undertone shade. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to take the kind of warmer shade and I'm going to focus that just in this kind of outer corner to give that lifting illusion. So I was just kind of lightly just start to buff it into the crease, ever so softly like this. And now I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other eye. That cool shade diffused in my crease, I'm going to take a precision crease brush like this, and I'm going to take her dark shade, which is called Subconscious, and I'm going to diffuse that out in just the outer corners right here. I'm going to do the exact same thing on this eye. The shade Subconscious in my outer V section, I'm going to take that same fluffy brush and just run it through my crease again, just to make sure that there isn't a harsh edge between the two tones, just to make sure it's all pretty seamless, you know, like it's supposed to be. Last step for my eyes is I'm going to take her highlight shade Lucid, and I'm just going to pack that back under my eyebrow, just to make sure that my eyebrow is the lightest point right here so it stays highlighted. Now that I placed that highlight down, I'm just going to make sure that it is seamless with my crease. Alright everyone, so that's going to conclude my video. I just want to thank you guys again for watching, and if you guys have requests, please leave some in the comments below. And if you guys are not already subscribed to my channel, please hit the subscribe button to show me some love. Until my next video, I will see you later.